not there yet! He's not there yet!
That's Davante Adams losing it after being shut down by Patrick Surtain too. And he's not alone. Justin Jefferson hates facing him. Ja'Marr Chase gets frustrated when Surtain outshines him. A lot of NFL wide receivers don't like Patrick Surtain, and many of them have explained why. Let me break it down. Davante Adams. If you want to understand why wide receivers absolutely hate facing Patrick Surtain too, start with Davante Adams. This is a man with 8,000-yard seasons, multiple All-Pro selections, and a reputation for making elite corners look foolish on a weekly basis. Adams has torched the best defensive backs in the league throughout his career, yet when he lines up across from Surtain, something changes. The frustration boils over, the trash talk gets personal, and even when Adams wins, he walks away looking like he just survived a war. The rivalry between these two competitors has produced some of the most heated, emotionally charged battles that AFC West football has witnessed in recent memory. Their divisional matchups have become appointment viewing for football fans who appreciate the chess match that unfolds between elite receivers and elite corners, and perhaps no moment encapsulated the intensity of their rivalry quite like what transpired during that unforgettable 2022 overtime game where Adams caught a game-winning touchdown against Surtain. In the immediate aftermath of that score, with emotions running at their absolute peak, Adams was captured on video delivering a message directly to Surtain.
He's not there yet! He's not there yet!
That moment went viral across social media platforms, with fans and analysts alike debating the implications of Adams' heated words. But here's the thing that makes this story so much more compelling. Despite the trash talk, despite the frustration evident in that moment, Adams has since come around to acknowledge what everyone watching could plainly see. Speaking on The Rush podcast in 2024, Adams admitted that Surtain is probably the best corner in the league right now, specifically noting his size, his speed, and his remarkable ability to match up physically with even the biggest receivers in the game. The numbers tell a story of dominance that words alone cannot fully capture. Over the course of 3 games, spanning from 2022 to 2024, Surtain shadowed Adams on approximately 65% of his routes, allowing just 12 receptions on 20 targets for a mere 141 yards and 1 touchdown. And that touchdown, of course, was the very play that sparked the viral trash talk. Adams' yards per route run drops precipitously to just 1.8 when facing Surtain, compared to his stellar career average of 2.5. In their 2024 matchup alone, Surtain limited the future Hall of Famer to just 4 catches for 54 yards. Adams has openly admitted that Surtain's length disrupts his releases in ways that make separation harder than most. For a receiver who has built his entire legacy on the ability to get open against anyone, anywhere, anytime, that's a profound admission. Adams ranked Surtain among his top 3 corners ever faced, emphasizing the toe-to-toe battles that define their matchups. The frustration is real, but so is the respect. That's what makes facing Patrick Surtain too such a unique experience. Even when you win, you feel like you've been through a war. Speaking of wars and heated rivalries on the football field, our next receiver brings us to another elite pass catcher who has been remarkably candid about the challenges Surtain presents. Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson doesn't lose battles to cornerbacks. The 2022 Offensive Player of the Year has made a career out of embarrassing defensive backs, stringing together back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons while making all-pro corners look like practice squad players. Jefferson is supposed to be uncoverable, but Patrick Surtain too didn't get that memo, and the frustration Jefferson feels about their matchups is impossible to hide. When the topic of Patrick Surtain too comes up in conversation, Jefferson's demeanor changes noticeably. In a Netflix receiver special reunion with his peers, a gathering of some of the most talented pass catchers in professional football, Jefferson openly declared that Surtain is the hardest CB to play against in the entire National Football League. Think about that statement for a moment. Justin Jefferson, a player who has torched defenses across the league with remarkable consistency, a player who has made all-pro corners look pedestrian on a weekly basis, is telling the world that one cornerback stands above all others in terms of difficulty. Jefferson elaborated on his assessment, explaining that Surtain shuts down half the field, making it extraordinarily difficult for quarterbacks to even consider throwing in his direction. The consistent openings that Jefferson finds against other corners, they simply don't exist against Surtain, whose anticipation and speed combine to close windows before they ever fully materialize. The statistical evidence backs up Jefferson's testimony with brutal clarity. Across 2 games between 2023 and 2025, Surtain covered Jefferson on 48 separate routes, allowing just 7 receptions for 89 yards with 0 touchdowns. Jefferson success rate plummets to just 45% when facing Surtain, compared to his career average of 62%. One 2023 game saw Jefferson held to a mere 3 catches for 27 yards in coverage, one of the worst statistical outputs of his entire professional career. Pro Football Focus graded Surtain at an exceptional 88.4 in these matchups, while Jefferson's grade dropped to 72.1, a stark departure from his typically elite numbers. The head-to-head statistics show Surtain with 3 pass deflections and 1 interception against Jefferson, including a particularly memorable 2023 play where Surtain flashed his remarkable closing speed to pick off a pass intended for the Vikings star receiver. What makes this rivalry particularly fascinating is the mutual respect that flows in both directions. Surtain himself has listed Jefferson as his number 2 wide receiver heading into 2025, acknowledging the immense challenge Jefferson presents on every single play. Jefferson's explosive releases and devastating double moves are considered elite by every standard, but Surtain's mirroring technique and ball skills have proven capable of erasing them entirely. The frustration in Jefferson's voice when discussing Surtain is palpable, but it's tempered by a deep respect for a fellow elite competitor. When Surtain is on the field, quarterbacks are forced to look elsewhere, dramatically limiting Jefferson's volume and impact. And for a receiver who thrives on touches, that's the ultimate form of competitive agony. Speaking of receivers who have publicly declared their admiration mixed with frustration, our next testimonial comes from another rising star who joined Jefferson in that very same conversation about Surtain's dominance. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown catches everything. That's his thing. Consecutive 1,100-yard seasons, virtually automatic on third downs, the centerpiece of one of the league's most explosive offenses. St. Brown has built his reputation on being the most reliable target in football, the guy who always finds a way to get open. But against Patrick Surtain too, that reliability disappears, and St. Brown has been forced to admit what so many receivers hate to say out loud. So when St. Brown joined Davante Adams and Justin Jefferson in naming Patrick Surtain too as the toughest cornerback to face in the Netflix special, it added yet another powerful voice to the growing chorus of elite receivers singing Surtain's praises, albeit reluctantly. St. Brown specifically cited Surtain's discipline and physical play as the factors that make him such a nightmare to line up against, noting that the Broncos' corner possesses a rare combination of mental processing and physical tools that locks down receivers in ways few other defenders can replicate. The legendary Richard Sherman, a future Hall of Famer himself and one of the greatest cornerbacks of his generation, echoed these sentiments when he observed that it's hard to find a rough rep on Surtain's film. For those unfamiliar with football parlance, that means that when you study Surtain's tape looking for mistakes, looking for moments of vulnerability that can be exploited, you simply don't find them. The man is that technically sound, that fundamentally perfect in his approach to the position. The respect between Surtain and St. Brown flows both ways, with Surtain praising St. Brown as underrated for his reliability, noting that the Lions receiver always gets open, except apparently when facing Surtain himself. The numbers from their matchups paint a picture of total defensive dominance. In their 2023 meeting, Surtain shadowed St. Brown on 32 routes, allowing just 4 catches for 38 yards with no touchdowns. Perhaps most telling of all, St. Brown's yards after catch, usually one of his most elite attributes with a career average of 5.2, dropped to a mere 2.0 when Surtain was the one making the tackle. Overall, Surtain has posted an 87.6 PFF grade against St. Brown, who averages 4.5 yards per route run over his career, but manages just 1.2 against the Broncos' lockdown corner. St. Brown's game is built on slot work and his exceptional ability to gain yards after the catch, making defenders miss and turning short completions into explosive plays. But Surtain's tackling and zone awareness stifle those very strengths, turning reliable targets into desperate struggles for minimal yardage. The admiration in St. Brown's comments is genuine, but the underlying frustration is equally apparent. Surtain transforms one of the league's most dependable receivers into something far less dangerous. The pattern is becoming clear. Elite receivers, regardless of their specific skill sets, find themselves diminished when facing Patrick Surtain too. And speaking of elite receivers with specific skill sets, our next testimonial brings us to a rivalry that stretches back long before either player reached the professional ranks. Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase destroyed Patrick Surtain II in college, absolutely torched him. 140 yards and a touchdown in that 2019 LSU-Alabama showdown that helped cement Chase as a future superstar. So you'd think Chase would welcome these NFL matchups, right? Wrong. The script has completely flipped, and the frustration Chase now feels when facing Surtain is written all over his face. 4 catches, 35 yards, across 4 entire games. Chase hates what Surtain has become. The history between these two elite competitors begins in the Southeastern Conference, where a 2019 matchup between LSU and Alabama saw Chase absolutely torch Surtain for 140 yards and a touchdown. It was a dominant performance that helped establish Chase as one of the premier receiver prospects in college football. But here's the thing about Patrick Surtain too that separates him from so many other cornerbacks. He learns, he adapts, and he gets better. In the NFL, the script has completely flipped. Chase himself has acknowledged that beating Surtain at the professional level is not that easy, specifically citing the cornerback's press coverage and exceptional footwork as the primary factors that make their matchup so challenging. When asked about strategies for getting open against Surtain, Chase has openly admitted that the corner's strength at the line of scrimmage thwarts the dip releases and quick moves that work against virtually everyone else in the league. The pre-game excitement that Chase feels when facing Surtain is palpable. The numbers since both players entered the NFL tell a story of complete defensive domination. Across 4 professional games, Surtain has covered Chase on 54 routes, allowing just 4 receptions for 35 yards with 0 touchdowns. Let those numbers sink in for a moment. 4 catches, 35 yards, 0 touchdowns, against one of the most explosive receivers in football. In a 2025 Monday Night Football matchup, Chase managed just 1 reception for 8 yards on 13 snaps against Surtain's coverage. Chase's success rate drops to an almost unbelievable 38% when facing Surtain, compared to his career average of 65% against all other corners. Pro Football Focus has graded Surtain at an elite 90.2 in their matchups, one of the highest grades the analytics site has ever given a cornerback in individual receiver matchups. At Chad Ochocinco's Wideout Workshop, Chase debated various counters and strategies for beating Surtain, admitting that the cornerback's physicality at the line of scrimmage is simply different from what other defenders bring. The college dynamic has been completely reversed, where once Chase dominated their matchups, Surtain now controls them with an iron fist. The frustration in Chase's approach to these games is evident, even as his competitive fire burns brighter than ever. When you've torched someone in college and then find yourself consistently shut down in the pros, the desire to prove yourself becomes overwhelming. But Surtain keeps answering every challenge with elite performance after elite performance. Speaking of elite receivers who participated in that very same workshop discussion about how to beat Surtain, our next testimonial comes from one of the fastest players the NFL has ever seen. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is the fastest man in the NFL, period. The cheetah has built his entire legacy on one simple fact: nobody can keep up with him. 5,000-yard seasons of just blowing past defensive backs like they're standing still, turning routine plays into touchdowns with speed that defies logic. So when Tyreek Hill, the fastest receiver alive, admits that he can't outrun Patrick Surtain too, you know something is very, very wrong, and Hill hates it. So when Tyreek Hill admits that Patrick Surtain 2's length counters his speed, that you simply can't just run past him, the football world should sit up and take notice. Hill joined Jamar Chase at Chad Ochocinco's Wideout Workshop, where the discussion inevitably turned to strategies for beating the Broncos' lockdown corner. Hill's assessment was sobering. Surtain's anticipation neutralizes the speed bursts that destroy every other cornerback in the league. Hill has publicly called Surtain elite, a designation he doesn't hand out lightly. The statistics from their matchups reveal a fascinating dynamic. Over the course of 2 games, Surtain aligned against Hill on 34 routes, playing press coverage on nearly 62% of those snaps. Despite Hill's team going off for massive yardage in one 2023 game, 157 total yards, Surtain personally limited Hill to just 3 or 4 catches for approximately 40 yards on the routes where he provided primary coverage. Hill's yards per route run drops dramatically to just 1.6 against Surtain, compared to his career average of 2.9 against all other corners. Pro Football Focus graded Surtain at 84.5 in these matchups, crediting him with 2 pass deflections, and noting that the long completions Miami achieved came against other defenders, not against Surtain himself. The blanket coverage that Surtain provides takes away Hill's most devastating weapon, the deep ball. When you can't simply outrun your opponent, when his length and recovery speed force you into underneath routes, the entire dynamic of the matchup shifts in the defender's favor. The insights from the Wideout Workshop revealed that Hill, like so many other elite receivers, has had to completely adjust his approach when facing Surtain. The usual tricks don't work. The speed that terrorizes defenses across the league becomes neutralized. For a player whose entire identity is built on being faster than everyone else on the field, that's a humbling realization to confront. Surtain's ability to handle Hill demonstrates his versatility as a cornerback. He's not just effective against big-bodied receivers who rely on physicality, but also against speed demons who want to take the top off defenses. That complete skill set is what separates elite corners from merely good ones. Speaking of versatility and complete skill set, our next testimonial brings us to a receiver who knows Surtain better than almost anyone in football, a former teammate who battled him every single day in practice. Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy knows Patrick Surtain too better than almost anyone in football. They were teammates at Alabama. They practiced against each other every single day in Denver for years. Jeudy has studied Surtain's game from the inside. He knows every tendency, every weakness, every habit. And yet, when he finally faced Surtain as an opponent after being traded to Cleveland, 2 catches, 20 yards, complete and utter shutdown. If anyone should be able to beat Surtain, it's Jeudy. The fact that he can't, that's the most frustrating part of all. During his time in Denver, Jeudy was effusive in his praise for Surtain's abilities, explaining in a training camp interview just how valuable those daily battles were for his own development. That statement perfectly encapsulates the paradox of practicing against Patrick Surtain too. It makes you better as a player, but it also exposes your limitations in ways that can be deeply frustrating. The daily battles sharpened Jeudy's route running and his ability to create separation, but they also reminded him constantly of the elite level of competition that Surtain brings to every single snap. Jeudy engaged in playful banter with his former teammate, trolling Surtain on a Twitch stream by saying, "Talking about you miss me in Denver. Keep missing." The competitive relationship remained strong, with Jeudy calling their first meeting as opponents a fun matchup while praising Surtain's smarts, length, and speed. At Chad Ochocinco's wideout workshop, Jeudy joined the broader debate about how to beat Surtain, agreeing with his fellow receivers that the cornerback's physicality at the line of scrimmage is simply different from what other defenders bring. The consensus among the workshop participants was clear. Traditional methods for beating press coverage simply don't work against Surtain. The statistics from their 2024 head-to-head matchup as opponents tell a remarkable story. Surtain shadowed Jeudy on 34 of his 57 routes, allowing just 2 receptions for 20 yards on 3 targets. Meanwhile, the rest of the league, Jeudy's yards per route run dropped to a paltry 0.59 against Surtain, compared to his career average of approximately 1.8. Jeudy finished that game with 9 catches for 235 yards and a touchdown. Impressive numbers on their face, but the overwhelming majority of that production came against non-Surtain defenders. When facing his former practice partner directly, Jeudy was essentially neutralized. Surtain later outlined his approach. Just knowing your keys and being patient with him, he has a lot of stuff at the line. The intimacy of their relationship, years of daily practice battles, shared time at Alabama, genuine friendship mixed with fierce competition, makes this matchup particularly compelling. Jeudy knows Surtain's game inside and out, and yet he still struggles to consistently beat him. That speaks volumes about Surtain's abilities. Speaking of intimate knowledge and daily practice battles, our next testimonial comes from another Broncos teammate who faces Surtain every single day. Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton lives the nightmare every single day. While other receivers only face Patrick Surtain too once or twice a year, Sutton has to line up against him in practice throughout the entire NFL season. This is a Pro Bowl receiver with 3,000-yard campaigns, a contested catch specialist who bullies defensive backs in jump ball situations. And yet, every day in Denver, Sutton gets his lunch taken by the same cornerback. The daily headaches Surtain causes have given Sutton a unique perspective on why receivers across the league hate facing this man. Sutton has been absolutely unequivocal in his assessment of Surtain's abilities, declaring him the best corner in the NFL without any hesitation or qualification. In a 2024 interview, Sutton elaborated further, saying that Surtain oozes that aura and came out of the womb the way he is, praising his natural command of the cornerback position. These aren't the words of someone who merely respects a teammate. These are the words of someone who has faced Surtain in competition thousands of times and come away in awe of his abilities. After Surtain signed his contract extension with the Broncos, Sutton expressed genuine happiness for his teammate. He's going to continue to be Pat Surtain too, Mr. Lockdown, Mr. Strap Up. The nicknames themselves tell the story. Surtain has earned a reputation for locking down receivers so completely that opponents have started using those monikers to describe him. The respect between these two competitors flows in both directions. Surtain has said that the Broncos haven't seen the best of Sutton yet, crediting their daily battles for mutual growth and improvement. At the wideout workshop, Sutton smiled during the debate about how to beat Surtain, adding, "I know how great he is because I go against him every day." While there are no official game statistics available since they're teammates, the insights from practice reveal the intensity of their daily battles. In 2025 training camp, Sutton had a fantastic practice against Surtain that included a beautiful jump ball grab, but Surtain often broke up passes that seemed destined for completion. Videos from practice sessions show battles where Surtain's mirroring technique limits Sutton's ability to create separation, with Sutton himself noting noting that Surtain causes headaches on a daily basis. Sutton's contested catch rate over his career sits at approximately 55%, elite by any standard, but that number reportedly drops significantly in practice drills against Surtain's physicality. Even for a receiver whose entire game is built around winning those one-on-one battles for the ball, Surtain presents challenges that force constant adaptation. This insider view underscores exactly why opponents hate facing Surtain. His consistency erases advantages, blending frustration with deep respect in ways that are difficult to separate. Speaking of deep respect mixed with competitive frustration, our next testimonial comes from another young receiver who views Surtain as the ultimate benchmark for measuring his own abilities. Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's releases off the line of scrimmage are supposed to be unstoppable. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, elite route running, explosive playmaking, the New York Jets star has torched corners across the league with footwork that creates instant separation. But against Patrick Surtain 2, one catch for 12 yards, an interception thrown his way, a 35% success rate. Wilson wants to beat Surtain, so limited production and the bitter realization that Surtain is simply on another level. But when it comes to Patrick Surtain 2, Wilson views the matchup as something different entirely, a benchmark, a measuring stick, a test of his own abilities against the very best the league has to offer. Wilson has called Surtain a great player and the best, describing their matchups as Wilson's respect for Surtain's technique is particularly noteworthy. He specifically praised Surtain's footwork, saying, he truly trusts his feet. It's rare you see that nowadays. For a receiver who relies heavily on his own footwork and release techniques to create separation, facing a corner with equally elite feet becomes an exercise in precision and patience. Wilson embraces the challenge with characteristic competitiveness. I want to go against the best to see how good I am. But underneath that competitive enthusiasm lies a recognition of just how difficult these matchups truly are. The statistics reveal the story in brutal detail. Across 3 games spanning from 2023 to 2025, Surtain has covered Wilson on approximately 60 to 70% of his routes. In their 2023 matchup, Surtain shadowed Wilson on 20 of his 29 routes, limiting him to just 1 reception for 12 yards on 4 targets, while also securing an interception. The 2024 game saw Wilson manage 3 catches for 54 yards, and in 2025, he was held to just 2 receptions for 22 yards. Wilson's success rate drops to approximately 35% when facing Surtain, compared to his career average of 62% against all other corners. Pro Football Focus has graded Surtain at an exceptional 88.5 in coverage during these matchups, crediting him with 3 pass deflections. Videos from their battles show Surtain's mirroring technique effectively limiting Wilson's typically explosive releases, forcing him into contested situations where the advantage shifts to the defender. Surtain, for his part, has praised Wilson as underrated, while noting that pressure disrupts the young receiver's rhythm. The respect flows both ways, but that doesn't make the frustration any easier to swallow. For Wilson, facing Surtain represents both an opportunity to prove himself and a harsh reminder of the work still left to do. The excitement of competing against the best is real, but so is the sting of being limited to low-volume, low-impact performances. Speaking of legends who have studied Surtain's game and attempted to decode his techniques, our next testimonial comes from one of the greatest receivers to ever play the game. Chad Ochocinco. Chad Ochocinco made a career out of beating cornerbacks and letting them know about it. 6 Pro Bowls, legendary trash talk, and a reputation for making elite defenders look foolish. So when Ochocinco hosted his 2025 wideout workshop and tried to teach today's receivers how to beat Patrick Surtain 2, he expected his old tricks to still work. They don't. Even the legend himself had to admit that his proven strategies are essentially useless against this cornerback, and watching the current generation of receivers struggle to find answers was both humbling and eye-opening. Which brings us to the 2025 Wideout Workshop, a viral event where Ochocinco attempted to teach modern receivers strategies for beating elite press coverage. The conversation inevitably turned to Patrick Surtain 2, and what transpired was both enlightening and somewhat humbling for the Hall of Fame caliber receiver. Ochocinco suggested a dip release as a potential counter to Surtain's press coverage, a move that had served him well during his playing days, but even as he demonstrated the technique, he admitted, back in my day, a dip would work, work, but on Surtain, not so easy. The current generation of receivers in attendance, Ja'Marr Chase, Tyreek Hill, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, pushed back on his suggestions, with Chase specifically noting that Surtain's patience at the line of scrimmage thwarts techniques that might work against other corners. In a viral clip from the workshop, Ochocinco broke down the challenge of attacking Surtain's press. In order to put pressure on him, you need to get on his cushion, but the receivers in attendance weren't convinced that even that strategy would work consistently. On social media, Ochocinco has continued to advocate for Surtain's recognition among the league's elite. Commenting on a PFF list ranking the best defensive backs in football, Ochocinco wrote, "Great list, but Surtain should be higher," demonstrating that even retired legends recognize what current players are experiencing firsthand. While Ochocinco obviously never faced Surtain during his playing career, he retired in 2012, years before Surtain entered the league. His workshop analysis utilized modern statistics to illustrate just how dominant the Broncos' corner has become. Surtain's 10.4% target rate ranks among the lowest in the league, meaning quarterbacks simply refuse to throw in his direction. He forces tight window throws on over half of the passes that do come his way, making completions extraordinarily difficult, even when teams do challenge him. The techniques that served Ochocinco so well during his career, the diamond release, the subtle hand fighting, the veteran savvy, were deemed essentially obsolete against Surtain's technical perfection. For a legend of the game to admit that his proven strategies wouldn't work against a current player speaks volumes about just how special Surtain truly is. Speaking of physical matchups and dominant defensive performances, our final testimonial comes from one of the most physically imposing receivers in the NFL. DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf bullies cornerbacks. That's what he does. 6'4", built like a superhero. Speed that has no business belonging to a man his size. Metcalf has made a career out of physically overpowering defensive backs who dare to challenge him. 5,000-yard seasons of just manhandling corners into submission. But Patrick Surtain too doesn't get bullied. In fact, Metcalf hates facing him so much that when he released his personal top 5 cornerback rankings, he placed Surtain suspiciously low, a move everyone saw as pure frustration disguised as disrespect. But Patrick Surtain too doesn't get bullied. In fact, when Metcalf released his personal top 5 cornerback rankings, Surtain was placed conspicuously low on the list, a move widely interpreted as a diss, given Surtain's demonstrated dominance over Metcalf in their head-to-head matchups. Whether that ranking was born of frustration, strategic gamesmanship, or genuine disagreement, it sparked considerable debate across social media. The statistics from their meetings tell a clear story of Surtain's superiority in the matchup. Across 2 games in 2022 and 2024, Surtain shadowed Metcalf on approximately 65% of his routes. The results were devastating for the Seahawks star. In their 2022 matchup, Metcalf managed just 7 receptions for 36 yards, with a longest catch of only 12 yards. The 2024 game saw even worse production, 3 catches for 29 yards. Metcalf's yards per route run drops to a mere 1.2 against Surtain, compared to his career average of 2.4 against all other corners. Pro Football Focus graded Surtain at 86.7 in these matchups, crediting him with 2 pass breakups and noting that he allowed 0 touchdowns. The blanket coverage that Surtain provides effectively prevented any of the deep balls that Metcalf thrives on, neutralizing his most dangerous weapon. Legends around the league have taken notice of Surtain's ability to neutralize Metcalf's physical dominance. After watching their matchups, observers noted that Surtain is one of the best CB prospects to touch the league in a while, high praise that reflects the unprecedented nature of what Surtain has accomplished against elite competition. Surtain himself acknowledged Metcalf's dynamic threat, but emphasized the importance of patience when facing such a physical receiver. Videos from their battles show the trash talk and physicality that define their matchup, but also reveal Surtain's technical precision winning out over Metcalf's raw athleticism. For a receiver whose entire game is built on physically dominating cornerbacks, facing someone who matches your size and exceeds your technical refinement is the ultimate frustration. Metcalf's low ranking of Surtain can be seen as evidence of that frustration. When you can't beat someone on the field, perhaps you try to diminish them off it, but the numbers don't lie, and neither do the sub-30-yard performances that define Metcalf's matchups against the Broncos' lockdown corner. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen.